Right. Here, cladded in my Australian outfit, because Australia has the worst, let me take it back, the worst Australian team in history, not in history, since 2010, 2011. I was going to make it sound bad, but since 2010, 2011, according to one Stuart Broad, has retained the Ashes in just a matter of 11 days. No, England has been smashed. They have been completely smashed. They have spoken about playing cricket a certain way for the last couple of years. They talk about Bazball. Again, if you talk to the England team, if you talk to Brendan McCollum, if you talk to Ben Stokes in the team, they will tell you they don't know what Bazball is. They will tell you they did not coin that phrase. That phrase was coined by UK editor Andrew Miller, but it's caught on. It's just been brilliant. It's been a brilliant sort of last 2 to 3 years where England has been one of the teams to watch in world cricket. They've been very, very, very entertaining. Some of their players like Ollie Pope, players like Zach Crawley, Jamie Smith, who came in earlier, played some games against the West Indies and looked like a world beater. A lot of these guys now are suddenly not looking like the players that we thought they were. But again, as always, Malik and I will break this one down today. Malik, what's going on? What's going on? The Ashes has been fantastic. If it's not been fantastic for both teams, it's certainly been fantastic for the Australians.
Roger, it's a massive Ashes victory for Australia. In 11 days, they've basically done what no Australian team has ever done.
Mhm.
I think the last team to win this quickly, I think, was 2001, where they won in 4,000 balls, but I think it was more than 11 days. So this is a massive victory for Australia. England has been smashed. This is a drubbing. I think England is going to go back to the drawing board and see what went wrong. And remember, Australia didn't even have their full strength team. They missed Pat Cummins, their captain, for the first two test matches. Josh Hazelwood, one of their best bowlers, I would say the best bowler for the last few years, wasn't there. Yes, Mitchell Starc was incredible and he was
Stephen
there.
Smith. Stephen Smith.
Stephen Smith missed this third test. Khwaja was dropped for the second test after not feeling good in the first. So it wasn't as if Australia was on full strength and they did this. They did this with less than 100% team, and they just literally smashed England, and a massive Ashes victory for Australia.
All right. So Australia 371 and 349 in the first innings. Travis Head getting a brilliant 170. Alex Carey 72. Josh Tongue 4 for 70. England in their first innings 286. And of course, a fighting 200 and 352 in the last in the final innings when England at one point appeared as if they may have a chance. Crawley, 85, Smith, 60, Will Jacks, 47, Starc, 3 4 42, Cummins, of course, 3 4 48, and Nathan Lyon, 3 4 77. Now, Samir, Will Jacks, not Will Jacks, Jamie Smith was going well, hit essentially four consecutive boundaries, just two consecutive boundaries right before getting out, and then decided to just slog one up in the air. Somewhere in his mind, he may have been thinking, Bazball, I have to Bazball this. The commentators were absolutely livid, with someone even suggesting that if the legendary Sunil Gavaskar was there, he would have said, stupid, stupid, stupid. What did you make of what James Smith did, Samir?
It was stupid. It was very stupid. Once again, I think after that test loss, I think England has been searching for answers This was a close game, 82 runs. But at the end of the day, it was still that Australia was way ahead in literally every aspect of the game. And whenever it looked like, somebody was gonna do something, Australia used to come back, right? So Jamie Smith, remember Starc, is one of those operators who's done incredibly well. I think he has 51 wickets this year in Test cricket now.
Hmm.
He has the most wickets as a left arm bowler, right? Left arm pacer. I think this guy is incredible. Three
Hmm.
wickets. Yes, remember what he's done in this Ashes series. I think he has 21 wickets. Is a lot of wickets, considering that he didn't have his you know brother in arms Josh Hazelwood out of the team completely. Pat Cummins wasn't there for the first two tests. Even Nathan Lyon was dropped for the second test, right? So he's been performing under significant stress, right? Because the whole country's burden is on his shoulders and on his left arm, right? So
Hmm.
incredible performance by him. And once again, that Jamie Smith wicket right there. Remember, on day 5, he took 3 out of the 4 wickets. He got Jamie Smith out, he got Will Jacks gone, he got Jafra Archer, and then Boland finished it off with Dunn, right? That's what happened. So unbelievable performance by Australia, unbelievable performance by Starc, by Travis Head. Once again, a lot of people are saying Travis Head is now the new Pakistani resident. As soon as he got that 100, he kissed the pitch, right? Pakistani batsmen usually do that. So,
That Brian Lara did that religiously. Also Shinra and Chanapal. Good afternoon again to the viewers for joining. Shubman, thanks for being back. Kirk, Arnud, thanks for coming back. Now, Ben Stokes spoke to the media after the game. Let's hear a disappointed Ben Stokes. Let's hear what Ben Stokes had to say.
Knowing now that we can't achieve what we set out to do here is obviously incredibly disappointing. I guess it moves over into right what else do we have in front of us? We've still got 2 games to go in the series. There's still a hell of a lot to play for us as individuals, us as a team. No, I've never ever underestimated the Australian team. That's one thing you never do. You never underestimate your opposition. And those are 3 things that cricket is built around. It's scoring runs, taking wickets, and catching catches. They've outdone us on all 3 of those things. So, they've just been able to execute, everything a lot better than us over a much more consistent period of time. We've had moments where we've been, very good, but Australia have been a lot better than us on, over a much longer period of time in the series so far. I know 435 is a huge total anywhere in the world, but the wicket was playing nicely, and we thought a couple of partnerships here on this wicket, we were in for a chance. It looked like that those 2 were about to pull off a heist for us because they played so well. And talking about the absorbing and then applying it back on, I thought they did that so well, and then that moment where Smudger in particular thought, right, this is that moment where I need to put something back on there. When the field had came up to him, the newer, harder balls obviously a little bit easier to be able to score off. And unfortunately, in that moment, he just wasn't able to execute what he wanted to do. We knew that, we were actually ahead of the game then before we'd even went out and batted. We knew that we had to go out there and, we had a great opportunity to be able to big score on the scoreboard for us in the first inning.
All right. So, Samir, a very disappointed Ben Stokes there. Audio was a little bit low. Could you hear Ben Stokes?
I could, but it was low.
Yeah. Very disappointed. Ben Stokes there spoke about putting pressure back on the opposition. Spoke about not being as good as they would have liked to be throughout the series. And Australia, being a lot better than them. What do you make of what Ben Stokes had to say?
Hey, listen, of course, as captain of the England team, he's very disappointed. He has been performing well. He has done pretty decent in this series, but obviously, he couldn't take the team over the line, right? yesterday night was probably his best chance if he would have scored some runs, and then getting into the fifth day had an opportunity. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that. Once again, England is disappointing. They've lost like 15 out of their last 17 test matches
Mhm.
in Australia, and they have not won even a single one in the last 17
Joe
tests. So
Root has never won a test match in Australia.
even
How
once again,
incredible! How incredible is that?
yeah,
Joe
but
Root.
listen, Joe Root has actually done pretty decent too, right? Once again, that century in the second test, and even the other day, Joe Root had 39. Once again, you needed Pat Cummins' magic to get him out, right? So once again, he's playing against world class players and he's performing, but at the same point, he hasn't had that standout performance that could carry the team over the line. That is the issue, right? You need you need those standout performances, and even though England scored 352, just like we were discussing West Indies, New Zealand, 430, 440 is not easy to chase, no matter where you play.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Representing the Kangaroos here. So winning is Ben Stokes under pressure. Will Ben Stokes be fired? I see Kirk Arnold here saying Ben Stokes could be dropped as captain and he's performing as a player. But we have a man like Chase who perhaps will not be dropped for the West Indies. Only in West Indies cricket these things happen. But what do
No,
you
no.
think?
Ben Stokes is not under pressure at all. He's a very successful England captain. Yes, this is a drubbing, but once again, he as a captain and a player is performing. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Ben Stokes says after the series he steps down. That's a different story altogether.
Mm,
But he's not getting sacked as captain.
mm. Um, what about Brendan McCollum? What about the director, Rob Key? Are they under pressure?
Absolutely. Hey, listen. In England, in English cricket, the standard of cricket is dependent on what happens in the Ashes, right? You lose the Ashes, there will be question marks. There will be people who will get fired. I think Brendan McCullum is a very, very good coach. If he gets fired and he's available, there are going to be 9 to 10 other teams around the world making that phone call.
That's true. And West Indies should be one of them.
Every team is going to be calling them. I don't think England wants to lose Brendan McCullum, but if it happens, I think it's going to happen where Brendan McCullum is going to have a job very quickly somewhere else. The guy has turned uh, cricket on its heels. Remember the way he used to bat? He was a fantastic batsman, and that's what he's done as a coach. He's given his players power. Unfortunately, listen, you when you go up against the buzzsaw that is Australia, right? Even though Australia wasn't at full strength, you saw even two-thirds of their bowling attack is better than 99% of any other team's bowling attacks.
Yeah. Ben Stokes did say that the team still has a lot to play for. 3-2 sounds a lot better than 5-0. So they will be looking to push forward. And of course, Australians have some additional problems, right? Nathan Lyon, he's out of the series. Pat Cummins potentially may not play the next game after coming in for just this test match.
But it might be an opportunity for younger players. Hey, listen, I'm hearing Cooper Connolly, who's performing extremely well in the Big Bash, might be inducted into the side. Remember, Khwaja was ill or had a back problem for the second game. He wasn't there. Steve Smith was out of the team. Pat Cummins probably is not going to play anymore in the series. He's going to be the only Ashes captain to win an Ashes playing one test, right? I think Steve Smith comes back. I think he takes over the reins again. I think they don't want to risk Pat Cummins getting injured again. There's no reason to. Remember, Australian summers are extremely hot. You don't need that.
Yeah. Kirk Arnold here is saying, Mr. Massive hit. Right now, England main problem is the bowling attack. There's too much pressure on just Archer. It is a pretty weak looking bowling attack, Samir. I I agree, Kirk. You know, these guys, Brian Cars and Josh Tong and the rest. I mean, coming from the lofty heights of Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, with Joffer Archer and there along with Mark Wood, this attack is suddenly not looking great, right? This attack is certainly one that is not as potent as previous ones that England has had, obviously. So, I mean, I do agree for sure that the attack isn't the greatest, and obviously the Australians have definitely shown, and have definitely taken advantage, I would say, because if you look at the Australian team, I mean, the joke going around now is that this is the worst Australian team in 9 or 10 years. We're laughing about it, but perhaps it's true. You know, this Australian team isn't the strongest on paper. They've obviously managed to turn over England, but I don't think that statement from Stuart Broad, Samir, I don't think it's an incorrect statement.
Roger, it was a terrible statement. It was a terrible statement, especially if you're wounded and you don't mess around with a wounded tiger, man. That's what happened here. They knew Cummins was injured. They knew that Hazelwood was injured. Australia didn't have the best, informed batsmen going into the
But
series.
Samir, hold on, Samir. If you look at this Australian team, man for man, compare this to the 2010 teams. Compare that to the 2013 teams with Mitchell Johnson and Michael Clark and all these guys and David Warner, who makes a huge difference
Of course,
opening the batting. This is absolutely the worst Australian team since 2010.
it wasn't the
There,
worst, but it was wounded, right? I think if you would have gone into this.
it's the least talented, Samir.
Yes, the least talented, you could say, for sure.
Okay.
I,
All
I,
right.
I would say the least talented. But, at the same point, it's just a question of looking at, the players, right? I think Green, who was batting at number 3 in West Indies, batted at number 5 in this series or number 6 in this series. Travis Head, who became the opener because Khwaja got injured, right? Steve Smith, who gets hurt or he gets ill and is not playing the third test. And Khwaja comes right back in and scores the runs, right? Marnus, who was out of form, comes back in, looks a little bit like his old Marnus. Now, I think, Marnus, had a poor third test, but, according to his standards. But overall, I think Marnus had a pretty decent series till now, right? So I think, there's many issues around Australia, but there are bigger issues around England. And that's what this series came down to.
Showman here making a really good point. Will Jacks, as the specialist spin bowler slash all rounder, is a complete joke. I mean, playing on this pitch, I don't in Adelaide, I'm not sure which is a pitch that is helpful to spinners traditionally, Samir. With Lyon, we saw what Nathan Lyon did. Surely England needed to play a specialist spinner. That was an absolute joke.
Listen, England came in short of a spinner anyway. Remember, Shoaib Bashir didn't have the best of times in England, and he wasn't expected to play a role in Australia, yet they brought him along, right? There was nobody else that they had. They actually don't have a really good spinner. Since Adil Rashid, retired from the red ball format, England hasn't had a proper spinner to really bring to the circuit. And because, Ben Stokes and his boys were doing so well, especially with the bat, it covered some of the issues England had. You saw what England suffered with India, in that 2-2 draw, right? That was an issue for sure. Where India wasn't the best team either in England. They had a drubbing against New Zealand at home, and they went to England and they drew the series 2-2. So those were the signals that I was looking at, and I was saying, even though England is very confident going to Australia, I don't see England in the same way that I saw them competing against the other teams. In Australia, you really, really need a lot more than what England brought to the table.
Yeah. Kirk Arnold here saying Mr. Massive Hit calling chase on all rounder should be a crime, and the Western selector should be arrested. I'll take my licks there, Kirk. I'll take my licks.
Listen, there's a lot of things going around. Chase is definitely not an all rounder.
I will take my licks on this one.
Chase is definitely not an all rounder, and neither is Will Jacks.
Yeah. Looking at the Australian team, do we see Kawaja continuing past this Ashes? Surely this has to be it.
I think so too. I think so too. But hey, listen, he had a great recovery in this Test match, right? That 82 after getting dropped at 5 by Harry Brooks, right? That was a marvelous innings, and that basically took all the air out of England's chances of trying to come back into the series.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, in the second innings, the guy still has another 40. And remember, he's playing out of position. He's playing at number 4, right? Where he looked very comfortable. But with Steve Smith hopefully coming back, I see a possibility where Khwaja is batting at number 5, because I'm sure that they're not taking Travis Head and moving him from the opening spot now.
They
I
could.
would be shocked.
They could. I know Travis Head has made a couple of brilliant hundreds, but they could put him back at 5. He performs everywhere, right?
Absolutely.
Let's face it.
Listen, Travis Head is one of the best Australian batsmen in the last 3 to 4 years. The only player that, obviously you can say is ahead of him is Steve Smith.
Okay.
In the last 3 to 4 years, remember Marnus has
Fair enough.
has lost a step. Green is not at the level of Head, right? Warner's retired. Khwaja has done pretty decent. Earlier in the year, Khwaja had a double century against Sri Lanka. But I think for sure, I would say that, Head is right there as a 1B next to Steve Smith.
So one thing that happens at the end of every Ashes, which is a cycle, obviously these teams look forward to the Ashes. Lots of careers end. We saw Jonathan Trott crying and going home mid-series. We saw Graham Swan going home mid-series. Carberry never played again after an Ashes. Lots of players. Stephen Finn. So Steve Harmison. Ashes has ended the careers of a number of players. Whose Ashes career, from an English perspective, Samir, do you think is over? I'm pretty sure, based on the noise that's going around, perhaps Ollie Pope is going to be dropped. Not sure if it's the end of his career. He's still a fairly young player. He's about 27, 28 years old. But whose career do you think will end? Because after every Ashes, as we know, heads must roll.
Yeah, of course. Hey, listen, from an English perspective, there's a lot of players that you're going to say are going to lose their spots here. Ben Duckett, once again, who's done extremely well over the last couple of years. There's going to be some question marks on him after these 5 tests are done. Ollie Pope.
What went wrong with Ben Duckett?
Nothing went wrong. Listen, Ben Duckett, once again, faced up against some very, very good bowling. That's what went wrong. Listen, when you're batting against Starc and Cummins, it's never easy, especially, on these pitches, which are much more bouncy. They're pacier. There's a lot of things can happen, when you're facing up against a Mitchell Starc, a Pat Cummins, a Scott Boland. A lot of things can happen, and that's what happened here. So I don't think that this is the end of Ben Duckett, but I think, they will look to reconfigure and maybe look for another opener, to give that person an opportunity to play along Zach Crawley. I think Zach Crawley's actually redeemed himself. Before this series started, we said Zach Crawley was the weaker link of the openers for England. But now it looks like it's Ben Duckett at this point.
Yeah, Zach Crawley's actually played quite nicely.
Very well. And then I think Ollie Pope, once again, he's a victim of his own success, right? Ollie Pope's done so well over the last couple of years. And then I think he had a double century against Zimbabwe before the England-India series. I think he did pretty decent in the India series. And now, once again, coming to Australia, it's been very, very tough for him. And once again, Pat Cummins in this Test match. Remember, he only played. Remember, we keep talking about Pat Cummins again and again, but he only played 1 Test match, right? And this 1 Test match, he takes 3 wickets in the first innings, and guess the wickets that he takes: Zach Crawley, Joe Root, Jamie Smith. Then in the second innings, once again, this is why I call him Captain Australia, right? There's a reason for it. In the
Hmm.
second innings, he takes Ben Duckett, Oli Pope, and Joe Root. These are big wickets that this guy is taking.
With the whole sort of advent of Bazball and players, do you think Ollie Pope, one of the reasons for him not having the sort of success that he would have liked, that the English fans would have liked, that Brendan McCullum and those who have placed their faith in him would have liked? Because one thing that's often said about Ollie Pope is that he looks frenetic, right? Which, do you think the whole baseball sort of era is forcing Ollie Pope to almost play too aggressively too early, and that is contributing to, because we saw Joe Root tried this. We saw Joe Root getting out to reverse sweeps and scoops and all types of stuff, and then Joe Root was just, he just stopped. He just started to play like old Joe Root. And there's a huge difference, right? Joe Root was back to making centers and double hundreds. Do you think that Ollie Pope, in trying to prove that he's a team man, in trying to prove that he wants to play the basketball way, has affected the way he would naturally play?
Absolutely. Hey, listen, Roger, if I was an English batsman, if I bat in the top 5 or 6 in England, including Harry Brooks, I'm calling for Bazball to be over. From a batting perspective, there's no reason that, English batsmen who are so talented like Harry Brooks and Ollie Pope should even be looking at this. I think they should just go to the coach and say, hey, listen, I think the Bazball era for batsmen is over pretty much. You can have the Ben Duckett still go out and try to do that against weaker oppositions, but against strong oppositions like Australia, I think this era is over for England. I think what's going to happen now is that I think these batsmen are going to start playing for themselves a little bit in the next couple of tests. You're going to see that, and then once the tour is over, I think players like Joe Root are going to go to management. And I think, Brendan McCullum will be part of this discussion and say, hey, listen, you guys tried it. It didn't work out. Now let's go back to a little bit more traditional. Once again, we're not going to the John Campbells of the world and saying score 2 runs in 50 balls. But at the same point, there has to be a certain amount of respect that you give the opposition, right? I think in this scenario, I think Bazball and Brendan McCullum and to a certain extent Ben Stokes were trying to basically disrespect Australia. And what happened was it backfired because in 11 days, the Ashes is over.
It's gone.
Didn't even
Guys,
get to the Boxing Day. Listen,
yeah,
the Boxing Day test match is the most sold out test match, right? Day one of Boxing Day is 90,000 people showing up. Roger, I have news for you. 90,000 people are not showing up.
right, right. Guys, go ahead and hit that like button. Mr. Go ahead and take this comment, Samir, from
So
Mr.
remember,
Arnold.
Mr. Massive hit yesterday. Hodge took 2 wickets and Chase was balling. Not off spin, but lollipop spin. Who told Chase he was a genuine spinner? The coach. He's only a part-time spinner. Guys, we're talking Ashes, but obviously, listen, we know where Chase stands. But let's talk Ashes right now because that is what we're going to concentrate on for the next few minutes. Before, remember, as soon as this hour is over, guess what's happening? West Indian batsmen are going to be batting on day 5.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see what happens. We'll see. In terms of which heads will roll. From
Roger,
an
one thing that I need to say, which makes a lot of sense, and I do see one of the comments once again. Our new, listener, Shabnam Sharma, champion. He's saying that England don't even know about batting orders. Pope is a middle order batsman.
that's at 5 for sorry.
Yeah. So I think, our listeners are very intelligent too, right?
Yeah.
They know the game and they're following us because they want our input on what is happening and they want to see our insight on, how the game is being played. And I'm going to tell you one thing. I think Oli Pope, of course, he's done very well for England. Obviously, Joe Root is batting at number 4. There was a case that could have been made that Joe Root could have batted at number 3 in
He doesn't want to do
Australia.
it. He doesn't want to do it.
But remember, I think, also it's about the scenarios, right? Where you are. What they really wanted to do was, have Ben Duckett come in, pressure the Australian bowling lineup. Zach Crawley batted very well, as you saw. And then, Joe Root coming in. And once the Australian bowlers are tired, you take care of business, right? That was the plan, right? Once again, when you have Pat Cummins, Mitchell Stark, and remember, England was very lucky they didn't have to face Josh Hazelwood, right? When you're facing these three trio and then you have Nathan Lyon coming in afterwards, there is no respite for the batsman. It doesn't matter if you're in the 25th over of the innings or the 50th over of the innings. These guys keep on putting pressure back on you. And that's what happened here. What you see is that Australia continues to put pressure on any team that they play. Remember, we saw the West Indies series, Australia did the same thing. For years and years, this has been Australia's plan. They keep on putting pressure. Now, obviously, a different format, but my mind goes back to the 2023 World Cup, right? The ODI World Cup. Remember, against India in the finals, the
Hmm.
way Australia kept on pressuring, and India had a great lineup, and they kept on pressuring, right? Josh Hazelwood, Starc, Cummins, keep on pressuring you. That's what happens here. I think Australia is one of those teams which will continue to pressure you, and especially when they see a weakness. And that's what they saw here. This Bazball, which everybody keeps on coining and talking about and everything, Bazball is great. Okay. But once again, there has to be a medium. Remember, me, I've been a very big critic of, playing very slow, right? Remember what I've said, the dead bat era is over, right? But that doesn't mean that you play T20 cricket and Test cricket.
Right. No, absolutely. And Australia's also been very, very lucky to have another golden era of bowlers, right? Great bowlers.
Absolutely.
When you have a Mitchell Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins, all with over 300 wickets, in some cases, Lyons over 570 wickets, Stark with over 400 wickets. I mean, what, not much can be said. I mean, and this follows on the heels of the Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, Jason Gillespie, Brett Lee, um, four-man attack as well. So Australia has been very, very lucky to produce sort of two era of GOAT attacks
Absolutely.
back to back. I don't know which one is better.
And it's
I mean, I,
designed. It's
I,
designed to perfection,
I,
Rod.
I like this attack better actually, even though obviously perhaps you can say that the two greatest out of those four would have been Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne, but I think this attack as a foursome is
Come-
perhaps better overall.
So, Roger, these four are relentless. That's what the
Yeah.
point I'm trying to make to you. Whenever they play cricket, right, they're relentless and they keep coming after you. That's the real problem. The pressure that they create on you is what got to England. England is still a very talented side. Nobody's questioning the talent level of England. This
Mm.
is not like we're discussing the lower tier teams when we criticize that there is a less talent available to them, right? England doesn't have less talent. Nobody's ever saying that Ben Duckett. I think Ben Duckett is one of the best openers over the last 2 to 3 years. Same thing with Zach Crawley. He's a very, very talented player. Oli Pope, Joe Root, I don't need to discuss him at all. I know he's one of the greatest batsmen ever that has donned the uniform for England and played amazing cricket. But Harry Brook, right? Remember Harry Brook coming into the series. What was Harry Brook averaging? Like close to 60?
Yeah.
Once again, that average has dropped by almost 5 points in the first three tests. And Harry Brooks, in from Harry Brooks standards, if I told you that Harry Brooks has scored 52 and 0, 31 and 15, 45 and 30, from Harry Brooks standards, is that a failure or what?
It doesn't sound too bad, but yes, from the lofty heights of
Listen,
and,
listen.
and
If you're
Kirk Arnold,
discussing,
Harry Brook is a vice captain, by
if
the
I
way.
gave you these numbers, Roger, and I put a different name in front of it, like I put a John Campbell in front of it, or I put a Muhammad Rizwan in front of it, or I put a player from New Zealand in front of it, like let's say I would put in Daryl Mitchell. You would say, all right, these are still some acceptable numbers. The guy is still averaging around 35 in the series, not bad, right? But when you come to Harry Brook, Harry Brook's numbers are not reflective of what he's done in this series. That guy has scored a lot of runs. Once again, I was going through the batting inning summary for Harry Brooks when he started off. And in his second test, the guy was 153 and 87. In his third test, the guy was 108 and 111, right? The guy was just churning out centuries after centuries, right? So this is a different situation right now. And what's happened is that Harry Brooks hasn't performed at the level that England was expecting him to.
Yeah. All right. Ashes done and dusted in just a matter of 11
Roger, I don't even
days.
think we're gonna be worrying about reviewing test number 4 and 5. We will for World Test Championship purposes, right? Remember, these points count for something. But Australia is way ahead right now. I think Australia is gonna still want to win the next 2 tests. But guess what? The interest is done. Everybody's going to be like, you know what? 3-0, it's over. The Ashes is done. Let's move on to the World Cup.
All right. The men in Kangaroo have taken the Ashes until next time. Stay
Massive.
massive.